Good evening, everybody. We're so happy to have you here joining us for Women's History Month with the Indiana Democratic Party. For those who don't know me, my name is Arielle Brandy, and I am the current president of Indiana Young Democrats. And this evening, I am so excited, not only because we're going to have a great conversation with Attorney General Pam Carter, but as a woman of color who is in political service here in the state of Indiana, it is my honor to be able to introduce Pam Carter to us this evening. She is the first elected African American state attorney general in the country. She is a first in this Hoosier state. She was the first female and the first African American elected to the post as well. She served our state from 1993 to 1997. I may have been just a young girl back then, but her story and her courageous effort to step up into leadership is something that I have admired in my time in public service. So I am so excited that this evening we have Pam Carter with us here to celebrate Women's History Month. Everybody, please welcome Attorney General Pam Carter.
Thank you. And I'm delighted to be here. And I'm so delighted to be able to meet you virtually.
I know, for the first time. So I'm very excited because I've heard so much about you. Your story is one that so many women in this state, especially within the Democratic Party, have been able to relate to. And especially me, I'm the first Afro-Latina woman to hold this position as president for Indiana Young Democrats. And as a Black woman in public service, it's just really nice and refreshing to be able to hear from women like you. So thank you for being here with us.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm delighted.
So as I stated earlier, you served in the state of Indiana from 1993 to 1997. And as being the first Black woman as Attorney General, can you talk a little bit about how race shaped and affected, you being in public service and in public office and in politics?
I would say that in some ways it affected me not at all, in that I am Black and I am who I am. But of course it was new. And so from the political consultants to the electorate, trying to get their arms around a candidate who didn't look like them. If you think about it, during the time that I was running, there were less than 10% African Americans statewide. The vast majority of the people in the state, more Republicans than Democrats. And so if you just look at the tilt, it would seem an unusual time to run for office. Evan Bayh was governor, and I have to say he was one of those villagers that raised this opportunity for me, and he was unstinting and relentless in his support of me, which was absolutely essential. But when I decided to be myself, and I think that's where I'm going with this, I had lots of consultants, and some that were very, very good and well known from Washington, D.C. And many of them suggested that I not go south to the southern counties. We have 92 counties, as you know, and we're going to have to go to all the counties. Plus, I had greater faith in the electorate and people here in the state of Indiana. And so we did. And when I say we, my family and I, and other members of the Democratic Party, because I was well supported. And we worked tirelessly, and we went to all 92 counties more than once. And what I learned, in particularly when I was in southern Indiana, to all of the counties, people are people, and they do take the measure of you. And so whether it was at a 4-H fair or speaking before a Rotary group, or when I went up to northern Indiana, and I have to tell you this really quick story. I went up to northern Indiana to speak at a Rotary Club, and it was in the part of northern Indiana where there's a large Amish population. And I had gotten there, it was very hot, and it was like 90 degrees. And so once I drove around, I was early and knew where I was going to speak. I stopped at the McDonald's that wasn't far from there to get an ice cream cone. I walk in, and the place goes silent. It was like, you may not remember the E.F. Hutton commercials, but it was silent. And so I said, hi, I'm Pam Carter, and I'm running for Attorney General, and I'm coming to get some ice cream. And so I got some ice cream, and I started going from table to table. And what helped me was more people then went to the Rotary to hear me speak, because it was right across the street. And then people invited me to their homes that evening. And I also got a chance to know many members of the Amish community. And that continued through my office holding. So just a bit of an example about being yourself. And it all will come, I think, if you have that level of confidence and pride in your identity.
Absolutely. And, it's really important to also realize, because I too have been able to have the privilege of traveling the state. When I first got started in politics, I actually was on the Evan Bayh campaign when he was running for Senate in 2016. So, had the opportunity there too to relate to traveling into counties where you think you may not be able to go, but then people meet you and they see who you are, authentically yourself, and they're able to relate to you, and then they show up at the next event because they want to hear you speak again and they want to hear what you're about as a Democrat. So that's a wonderful story. When
Yeah.
you were in office, you centered making sure that diversity was relevant in your office. You made sure that you had women, diverse folks working for you, and I think that's really important at this work because we need to be able to see that kind of culture in the workplace. Talk a little bit about some of the women in your life that have influenced you while you have been in public service, whether it's the women you had the opportunity to work with or someone who has just paved the way for you as a trailblazer.
It's interesting because since there weren't many women before, I ran for office for the Attorney General, but the year that I did run, there were 10 of us, 10 women for the first time in 1992. And I admire every one of those women, and we all won that time. But what was interesting is that the National Associations of Attorneys General have meetings, and they have several. And we went to one, and we were invited. And then the two attorneys general that were there at that time and had been elected to office invited us, and they were both Democrats and Republicans. And they gave us the real training and development. They told us they're gonna be very harsh with you. You're gonna have a lot of negative media. They will come after you and your family. They will tell you how to dress and you should follow your own instincts. They went right straight through, and they also shared their experiences, not in a negative way or to frighten us, but not to sweet talk us into not expecting really rough and tumble exposure to the toughest parts of politics that were coming. And they were right. And what I had often heard was, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's down ballot. You're going to be fine." But when I heard the women talking about what their actual experiences were like, it was harsher, it was tougher, much more judgmental. But on the other side, we were also able to bring together women and many men. And I had people calling saying, "I just don't like the way you're being treated." So there's also a backlash in terms of the level of respect. So I would say that the attorneys generals, I admire them because we were together and we still are very good friends. And so, we've formed a bond during that time. I have to tell you, though, my biggest person that I admire most is my mom and the nuns. And the reason I want to mention that, and I go back, is because I was in an environment with women who had courage and vision and fortitude and resilience. And they were the ones that consistently told me about the opportunities that life had. And they didn't focus on the barriers, but on being prepared, on being able to do what you needed to do, that you could shoot for the stars and you might just get there. And so I think that had more to do with my ability to weather the tough parts and then celebrate the great parts.
Absolutely. And you mentioned some really great words when you were describing these women: resilience, fortitude. Like, those are things that I think, when you are stepping into the work of public service and you're trying to figure out what your legacy is going to be, you're also sometimes not prepared for some of the barriers you may face as a woman too. So let's talk a little bit about some of the barriers that you may have faced as a woman of color running for public office. And I know you talked about some of the great things that happened, but let's get a little deep and talk about what were some of the barriers, because we know that they exist. And I think it's good for women to hear that you can still overcome them and still be successful, even if there are barriers in your way when you're trying to run for office.
Oh, sure. Major underestimation of capability, being easily dismissed, and overlooked. Not being immediately respectful or protected, even in the face of insult. Making certain that I was okay. Just throw you out there, but I don't know that it was always a lot of emotional support, broad based, and I'm talking about writ large, while in office or running as a candidate. So there will always be opportunities for you to, like I said, celebrate, but you're going to experience a great deal of, like I said, negative media coverage. It's often hostile.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to find that people just can't get their minds around the fact that you could be really capable, and more importantly, that you have power. I think the fact that people of color and women of color have power and have the ability to wield it is not only disconcerting, but I think it penetrates one of the big racial myths about who's in charge and who's not. And then to add on to that, gender is just more than some people can handle. And so you'll feel that, and you'll feel it when you walk into rooms to give a keynote speech. You'll feel it when you are being questioned by editorial boards. I had one tell me how articulate I was. Man, I'm an attorney general. I'm a lawyer, but it didn't matter. I mean, for them, it was like, wow, she can actually speak the King's English. So you're going to have all of that you've read about and that you see on television, and it's real.
Absolutely. How do you think that we overcome some of those barriers in Indiana? We've been trying for so long as Democrats to try to dismantle some of those barriers for women and people of color. How do you foresee us moving forward as a state on dismantling that for us moving forward, especially for my generation? A lot of us are thinking about running for office, or we either have, whether we've been successful or not. It's still something that we're chipping away at as a state and as a party. How do you think we dismantle some of those barriers for women and people of color?
Well, Arielle, you're already doing it. You're a leader. and it's by actually getting into these positions and gaining the experience and then reaching out, because you know more people in your own racial and gender orbit than many others do. And that's what we did at the Attorney General's office. Our office looked like Indianapolis, Indiana, South Bend, Terre Haute. It looked like the state of Indiana. And so therefore, we were able to reach out and touch constituencies. They could come in, whether it's in a courtroom or in our offices, and they see people that looked like them. So that way we know that they felt engaged, welcome, comfortable, and they had access. And I think the more people feel a part of institutions and that it actually has that level of porousness that can come from your kind of leadership, it's really very important, because after that, then everything else becomes just a matter of how you begin to put together an election and garnering the funds, etc. But you need everybody in that tent.
Absolutely. And that's one of the great things about our party is we're the big tent party, and we get to welcome in so many people to be a part of the political process.
I have to say one thing. May I say one thing? Absolutely. That I was just thinking about, in terms of the Gen X, the millennials, the Gen Ys, the disease, I am so excited about what I've seen and what you all are doing already. We step off the stage at our age, I have such confidence that you all are going to really take the reins. I'm seeing it already, and really push us toward a real new dawn. And I am going to be one of your big boosters. I can assure you of that, because I just think it is so important. And I have been so delighted at the engagement in the political spectrum, the risk that you've taken, the offices that you all are winning, the issues that you're confronting, the level of honesty that is being leveled for all of us to see, unvarnished.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely essential, but also a vision of what America will be like, what Indiana will be like.
No, you're absolutely right. And thank you for saying that. That means a lot to me. And I'm sure to all of the young people and the women out there watching, that are stepping into this work. And we want to be, essentially just like you, doing this for a long time and being able to make change within our own communities. And with you being a first, not only just, first female, but a first Black woman in this post, talk about some of the ways in which you were able to create positive change within the Black community. How did you center your work around that? What were some of the intentional things that you did as one of the first? Because I think that's important too, is that sometimes we hear when people get into these offices, they forget about where they came from. They forget about, the people that need them the most and are their most vulnerable. How did you center your work as Attorney General around how you could create and affect, positive change in the Black community?
Did it in many different ways. We were focused through the law. And so one of the ways in which that was done is that I argued a case before the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals about rape shield statute here in Indiana. And the state legislature had passed a bill that said that no woman should have her past be a part of a rape trial, because that's sort of irrelevant. If she was raped, she was raped. And so we're not going to look at the past. And so it shields her from, for example, if she was a sex worker or prostitute or something like that, or just generally, because they tend to attack women. So then the federal courts nullified that. And so I challenged that and then argued that the state of Indiana had its own sovereign right to issue it and create its own criminal statutes, and we wanted it to stand, and we won. So now we still have the rape shield statutes to protect women when they're in a court if they have accused someone of rape. I had, during our administration, the Victims of Crime Constitutional Amendment. People don't realize that more Black women than any others, Black women and children, have the largest percentage of being victims of crime, and yet they're the least protected. Mm-hmm. And so how do you think about protecting people, even if it's a proclamation within our Constitution? It's a constant reminder that there are lots of women and their children and people of color and others who are marginalized who are really affected when they have violence or other crimes committed against them. I think also in terms of just being there, answering the call when people come to ask you to speak, to celebrate the variety of festivals and celebrations that are all over the state of Indiana, to be there when people need your help. We help consumers. We help those who are going through, the appellate process. Mike Tyson was a part of our time there. And one of the things I wanted to mention there is that we decided to not celebrate the prosecution, but to do our work. And so all the media was here and we refused to participate in that. We didn't have any press conferences, and because we didn't want to build our reputation on the backs of anyone, celebrity or not. And so I think that, being a role model and trying to also have high ethics and integrity in the office is really important.
Absolutely. And I think, when you talk about integrity and being able to step into this role, sometimes, especially us as Black women, we come into this and there's this narrative already painted about us and for us, whether it be, like you said, the media or the public. How or what would be your advice to Black women who are seeking political office or even hold office themselves on how they can take back the narrative of being authentically themselves and being able to serve?
I do think that we have to be very well prepared, that we have to pursue excellence and not embrace mediocrity. Yep. Once you get into office, don't think that you've arrived. You have just begun. Because then if you're a student of whatever you're doing and performing, then you're constantly learning, and it reflects the fact that you're open to feedback. Don't take it personally, but do take it seriously. And then you are able to distinguish between what we call noise and signals. What times will you really take seriously something, or when can you, trudge ahead and persist until you succeed? And then make sure that you have a vision, and then go for it. And make certain, or even if everyone's saying it's impossible, if you think it isn't, then go for it. And I think if you do, you'll make, one, you'll go further. And two, I think you inspire those who you have brought in to help fight this fight to do an extraordinary job. And I had a great staff. We're still great friends, but that was a top-notch Attorney General staff, and it's still well known. And they have earned that reputation through their actions, and they self-selected, and they were already excellent candidates before. And they're even better now because we had runway. We were young too, yeah, at some point, and they made such an impact. But pursue excellence and just do the right thing. It goes a long, long way.
Absolutely. One of the other cool things that I learned about you was that you were featured in Ebony at one point as one of the 100 most influential women. And that right there has to be a very high honor. How did that make you feel in that moment? You know, you're in a Black published magazine. Now, you know, looking back on it, I remember my grandmother had every issue of Ebony possible. So I wish that I could get
Yeah.
my hands on the one that you were in so that I could see it myself. But how did that make you feel to know that at that point in history, you were looked as one of the most influential Black women in this country at that time? And even now, so.
I felt more of a sense of responsibility and obligation. I get a little shy when they started giving me any kind of accolades, but what I would say is that it spurs me on to make a difference because I must be doing something in terms of contributing. So I'm not one that likes the celebrity component very much. I never have. But I loved the public service component. I loved being able to have a platform where I could make a difference in people's lives. And I didn't mind advocating, even if it brought in a lot of tensions and conflicts. If I believed in something, we had a great team that could actually execute it, I was ready to go.
I love that. I love that. And I love that you centered so much of what you did just around the service piece of it. Because sometimes we see so many elected officials or folks that seek public office and they center more of the fame and, like you said, the media and stuff. So it's so nice and humbling to see, you know, people start to now really center public service around their work when they're running for office. Last question for me, because I think it's important to one, be able to receive advice from you, insight, you know, little gems that you can drop for other women who are thinking about running for office, getting involved in politics, public service, holding a position on a board, whatever it may be. What would be your advice to women who are looking to step into leadership? Because we need more of them, a lot more of them, especially here in the state of Indiana. So what would be your gem for the evening for women who are looking to step into leadership?
Well, first of all, pursue your dream if that's what you want. You know, have the courage and fortitude to pursue that path. And and then make sure that you are bringing others along. I believe in the rising tide lifting all boats. And I'm going to give you a real quick example of just being a candidate. You're traveling through the state. We had to wear hosiery a long time ago in those days, and I'd go into many stores and they wouldn't have my shade, or they wouldn't have cosmetics, basic things that you may not have available to you because they don't sell what you need.
Yeah.
You have a platform for talking about that and saying, hey, ladies, here's what you need to do. Do you understand that even with personal grooming, you might have to pack a bag, even if it's going to be an hour trip, because they might not have what you need. And the same thing with making sure that you find mentors, a kitchen cabinet. I have always found advisors everywhere I've gone. And I want them to poke at me, and they're separate and apart from the office that I would have held. And I still have them for the roles that I have now. And they are really helpful. And I read a lot. And so I think being a constant student, being really just so dedicated and passionate that you really want to know everything you can, and then go for it. And if you don't win, or, brush yourself off and try again. You have the rest of your life. And I don't know why what are they waiting for? Take the risk.
No, absolutely. And I think that's so important because they say you have to ask women about 7 times before they decide to say running for office. So, it's nice to be able to hear from you to just go for it. So to all of our women out there that are watching, if you're thinking about running for office or stepping into leadership, you have it here from Attorney General Pam Carter. She says, take the risk, go for it, be authentically yourself when you do it, and center yourself around public service. And I think that's so important. And I am so happy that I had the honor to be able to have this conversation with you this evening. I wish we could stay on here for hours more to talk. But if you have anything else you want to say before we close for the evening, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
No, I just want to thank you all very much, and the Democratic Party for continuing the good fight. You supported me when I was running as a candidate and as an office holder, and I will always remember and appreciate that. But I am so impressed with you, Arielle, and I just wish you the best in your leadership and the path, whatever you're going to take, and all the best to you.
Thank you so much. And to all of our viewers out there, thank you for joining us this evening. It is Women's History Month. Stay tuned for more conversations that the Indiana Democratic Party will offer for you guys. Again, Attorney General Carter, it has been an honor. Thank you for spending your evening with me. I hope that we can chat again soon.
Yeah, me too. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.